What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you my first impressions of Mass Effect 1. So to kick this off, despite reviewing and playing a great many games as well as almost every game BioWare has made at this point, I have never played the Mass Effect series. So naturally, I am pretty excited to dive into this one. Now, I'm going to be playing the Legendary Edition, which of course includes all three games in one, but I think that's worth mentioning because it's my understanding that they did change a few things from the originals. But this far out from the release, obviously there was no way to recreate that exact experience everyone else had anyway, and combine that with the fact that all of the achievements and everything for the Legendary Edition are very well laid out and categorized, etc., it makes my job a little easier. So I will be reviewing each game individually, starting obviously with Mass Effect 1, and I'll be doing all the achievements, etc., for each game at a time, but it's going to only show the one game on my Steam profile, so just something to keep in mind there. Now, if you're new to the channel, I review games after 100%, that's the whole point. Enough of that, let's actually talk a bit about Mass Effect. So, right off the bat, I have to admit something that I found kind of funny. I always just assumed that Mass Effect was named Mass Effect because, you make a lot of decisions that would have a effect on the wider galaxy. So, Mass Effect. And it wasn't until I was reading the splash text at the start of the game that I learned that the technology enabling all of the galaxy travel, if you will, is called the Mass Effect. So you learn something every day, I guess. That said, my impressions of the story for the first title here are pretty positive, actually. While at least at the beginning of the game here, I'm a good ways into it. I've started exploring the galaxy and everything, so I'm a decent ways into it. I will say, though, that up to this point, the choices have been relatively minor. I was expecting things to be a bit broader in that sense. And while there have been choices, of course, like the typical Paragon Renegade type stuff, most of it's been relatively minor. I'm assuming there's going to be some bigger choices that crop up later, but right now it's all been kind of relaxed. That said, what I liked the most about the introduction to the story is just how well it introduces all the characters and the concepts. Because for starters, just playing Mass Effect 1 here, it really feels like a whole world has already been thought out and there's stuff to learn, and the game will throw up codex entries and you can learn all this extra stuff as you play the game. And then combine that with the fact that the companions are introduced in what feels like a very organic way in the prologue. And so far, at the beginning, I'm impressed with the storytelling for the main game. That said, as I mentioned, I'm a little ways into the title already, and I will tell you that the quality of the side quests, the writing and things in comparison, is extremely lackluster. Not all of them, and a lot of times the story of the side quest, or at least the concept of it, is interesting enough, but the actual quality of that side quest is basically just go to this place, kill all these enemies in this one room, and then come back, which has been a little disappointing given how good everything else has been. Now, I do want to mention that I am jumping straight into Insanity mode. Everything you're seeing here is on Insanity mode, which is the hardest difficulty. Given that I play a lot of strategy type games like TRPGs, CRPGs, etc., that require a bit more tactical thinking, and knowing I was going to have to play this on Insanity anyway for the review, I decided to just jump into it straight away. And the prologue and the early parts in the Citadel were very easy, even on Insanity. Now, when I got to the rest of the galaxy, things got a bit harder because you can, of course, go wherever, more or less. So it's very easy to get into places that are much higher level than you. So I had to kind of double back and focus a little more on things I was supposed to be doing rather than side questing. But beyond that, Insanity mode has not been that bad. But I will say what is bad is the combat. And I don't mean that in a mean way, because a lot of the stuff that you're doing for combat is pretty cool, like using your biotic abilities, which is sort of like psychic stuff from what I understand, along with all the various weapon types you can use. On paper, it seems fun. However, there are some issues with combat that I think make it more frustrating than fun. And in fact, most of the bugs I've experienced have all been around combat. For instance, if you're in combat for more than a little while, for some reason the audio just completely quits out. Right at the very beginning of the game, I had a companion kind of glitch out on me and become immortal, which wasn't exactly a bad thing. It just felt a little ridiculous. And then there are other parts of combat that I don't think are bugs per se, but are just kind of annoying. For instance, there's a cover system, so when your character gets close to something, they just automatically go into cover, but this is a little too sensitive because sometimes you're just running and trying to get to a different position and your character decides to take that moment to dive into cover that you weren't trying to get into, which really messes up the flow of combat. And then the AI just in general isn't very intelligent, so the combat, while conceptually pretty cool. I like a lot of the abilities, and visually it's pretty fun. And the weapon variety is even nice, but there are just a lot of problems that make it kind of annoying. Which brings me to my second round of annoyances. The actual space exploration part of the game is kind of underwhelming. You either survey planets from your ship, from the world map, or you actually land on a planet with the Mako. The Mako handles in a way that doesn't make any sense. There will be times that I'm pressing accelerate, and for whatever reason, the Mako goes in reverse. So definitely some interesting control schemes there, but I did kind of know about that. I saw the memes and stuff a long time ago, and even currently, about how poorly those things handle. So that wasn't exactly a surprise, but I guess I was a little surprised at how bad it actually is. But exploring the planets, because there are a few planets that you can actually land on, which essentially puts you into the sandbox with the Mako. And there's things to find, like minerals and things you can survey for credits, which is nice enough, but it's just very bare bones in comparison to the main story stuff, because everything revolving around the main plot and the companions is really well done. And then it's they added all this side stuff that just doesn't feel like it's of the same quality, which is kind of interesting. But it is worth mentioning, of course, that this is a remaster, essentially, of an older title, as Mass Effect 1 is actually a bit old. So it might just be that I'm looking through this from 2022 eyes and nitpicking it. But again, the story, the companions and stuff, I'm having a lot of fun with that. I'm actually playing a Vanguard, if anybody's curious. So we'll see how that goes for the rest of the game. But overall, if I had to leave you guys with specific first impressions, story and the writing so far are pretty good. A little less choices, but I imagine that's going to come up later. But for right now, the quality of the writing, I think, is pretty solid, so I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying the world building, all the alien races and just how varied and different everything is. You can tell they put a lot of thought into it. But my main complaint right now is the combat is a little sketchy, which isn't exactly news for an RPG of this type. And then, again, the side content feels a little questionable quality-wise. There you guys go. My first impressions of Mass Effect 1 and some information about me reviewing this stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.